and welcome to Everfree Radio Presents here on Everfree Network. We're bringing you our latest episode reviews. Sorry it's taken so long. Holidays have a tendency to make everybody really busy. So, our latest review today is Apple Family Reunion Season 3, Episode 8, written by Cindy Morrow. And today our reviewers are, of course, myself, your host, Brushin Bones, Cowboy Dave.
Howdy.
Crescendo.
Hey there.
And Ramble.
Hello.
And just like last time with the Wonderbolts Academy review, we're still going to be trying out this new format. We got some positive feedback on the last one, so we're going to keep on going, see how we do. I'll start us off with a summary of our episode today. Every pony in the Apple family is coming to this year's Apple Family Reunion. So to take the stress of planning off of Granny Smith, Applejack takes charge of everything. Unfortunately, in her attempts to make this year's reunion the most exciting and memorable ever, Applejack takes things a bit too far, over-planning and micromanaging everything, which culminates in frustration, exhaustion, and the destruction of the barn. Applejack eventually learns that the reunion isn't so much about doing a whole bunch of crazy events, but rather about spending time making memories with your extended family. We finish off the episode with an energetic barn-raising song, and by evening the photo album is filled with pictures from the latest successful, if only barely, Apple Family Reunion. So, first thing to bring up, this is not actually the first time an Apple Family Reunion has been mentioned in the series, is it?
Certainly not. We actually, our introduction to this series was brought in with preparations for, wasn't it for the princesses, if I recall?
Well, the Apple Family Reunion was apparently going on at the same time as the preparation for the Summer Sun celebration.
Ah, that's right.
All the way back in the pilot episode, we find out that the whole reason so many family members were present at Sweet Apple Acres when Twilight showed up was because they were all there for the Apple Family Reunion, and Applejack relays us that information in Applebuck season.
Granny Smith, in this episode at the beginning, she says, "I can't believe it's been almost 100 moons since the last one."
Yeah, because how many moons are in a year?
100 moons for us would be about 8 years.
Well, maybe the moon works a little differently in Equestria.
Damn you, Luna.
I can't really imagine it having been 8 years since the pilot episode, can you?
Not at all, especially with the seemingly unchanged ages of the various ponies that we are experiencing.
Those Cutie Mark Crusaders have been trying to get their Cutie Marks for 8 years.
No, clearly it's a time travel episode. They're just seeing themselves. It's the past versions of themselves going to the future. Obviously.
This isn't Back to the Future.
Oh, gosh. And it's not Doctor Who. Get rid of your wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. Okay, so we do find out, however, that apparently for this year's Apple Family Reunion, everybody in the family has RSVP'd that they will, in fact, be showing up. So that means we'll be getting to see more of characters that we met before, right? Like Brayburn and the Oranges, since they're also Apple extended family. They live out in Manhattan, and of course we do get mention from Apple Bloom that we're going to be seeing her favorite cousin Babseed.
It's nice that they kept, they brought Babseed back in, because there was a lot of buzz about, is she actually going to be a character that's brought back? Is she just going to be a one-time, episode and then we never see her again? But it's good that they kept her in for continuity.
Yeah, I do like that they acknowledge that sort of thing. They've been pretty good, like with a few flubs here and there, I think, but for the most part, they've been pretty good about maintaining a kind of continuity in the series.
Though, I will say, I may have just missed them, but did anyone notice the Oranges at all? Because they're still part of the family.
I didn't notice them in the episode. I did notice the apparent Radish family that is a branch for some reason.
Did anybody actually manage to catch sight of Brayburn?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because he was there, although he didn't have any speaking parts. No Appaloosa.
Well, he has a photo with Applejack near the end.
He's in several frames, several scenes, I should say, throughout the episode.
Speaking of Babs, you mentioned that the writer of this episode was Cindy Morrow, who actually wrote one bad apple. So I'm wondering if that had anything to do with why we're seeing the character return so soon.
I can see that. Now, there is one thing that I think that we should probably mention, and I realized that it might have been a good idea to mention this at the beginning, but it just now hit me, and that's that this is probably our first Applejack-centric episode since the last roundup. And we all know how the last roundup was met by the fandom, and what that essentially amounted to in the eyes of most people who saw it as a quote-unquote Applejack episode. The parts with Applejack aren't exactly as memorable as some of the more controversial things, such as the appearance of Derpy, the speaking part of Derpy, and Pinkie Pie just being generally insane. This would be her first limelight episode since the last roundup. So we'll make sure to mention what we think of it as an Applejack spotlight episode when we finish all this up at the end of the review.
There really isn't a lot of distraction from, it really is an Applejack-centered episode. I like that because we really haven't had a whole lot of expansion on, Applejack for quite some time now. And they've built on, say, Fluttershy's character quite a bit throughout this series. I was a little disappointed they didn't go further into Applejack, but it was only a matter of time.
They've shown a lot of development for Fluttershy or for Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie and even Twilight. She usually gets a lot of the focus in like the two-parters and stuff like that. But when it comes to Applejack, she's kind of been left in the dust enough that the fandom has actually created jokes about how Applejack is their favorite background pony and things like that. Moving on through the whole thing, we get a little bit where they're talking at the table about the planning for the stuff and that Granny's not so sure that she'll be able to handle it all. And she does this weird thing with her face where she pushes her skin up and makes herself look young again before it sags down. And that weirded me out quite a bit.
That's a great little gag. I mean, there's a number of those in the episode. And it's nice that they don't really overdo it, but they have those moments thrown in.
Nice little funny moments where people do something, or where one of the ponies does something really weird. Usually it's Pinkie Pie doing that sort of thing, though. After all that's done, we get to see the Apple family photo album and get a few flashback scenes where we are, of course, introduced to various different characters who we'll be seeing more of throughout the episode, such as Granny Smith's favorite cousin, Apple Rose.
I'm not sure how you get the combination of Apple Rose myself. That's certainly a new one for me.
I'm trying to think of whether or not apple trees have been known to, if like an apple's left for a long time, if they've been known to like flower or anything like that. Because I don't know anything specific like that. But maybe there's some apple trees or apple types out there that have flowers as well.
Well, I mean, the act of apples growing on the trees is flowering anyway, so you can probably pull it from that. It also just might be a naming convention that they just ran with. They don't always have to make sense, after all.
Well, and they've also got a lot of various different... there are also various different cases where sometimes they're named after, like, food products. So maybe an apple rose is a form of apple that's been cut into, like, the shape of a rose or something like that. I've seen a lot of those sort of artistic food types where they'll go and they'll do something stylish with how they carve a turkey, or how they'll cut a particular piece of fruit to resemble this, that, or the other. If you watch a lot of anime, you'll know that one of the popular ways of slicing apples in the Japanese media is to make them look like little rabbits.
Yeah, those are cute. In fact, I hadn't considered that when I was watching this episode the first time around and looking at the various different ponies and their cutie marks. And some of them, I was just kind of curious why they were there, but it makes sense.
Maybe just to save us some complaints from angry agriculturalists, apple trees do flower. They need to cross-pollinate before they can produce a fruit.
No. What it must be is she's not called Apple Rose. She's called Apple Rosé, and she's named after a particular brand of apple-flavored wine that's a mix of red and white.
Because that's just what we need. More alcoholic pony names, right?
Berry Punch. She's making an appearance as a family member, huh?
But bear in mind, wine is the classy drink.
You always need to have a glass before bedtime. So, as we're learning about the various different photos and get some flashbacks to the past, we even get a nice little bit with baby Applejack, who eats like a grown stallion.
Oh god, that scene. I was not prepared for that when it came up on the screen. Just I was like, oh, and she's like, I'm Applejack. Oh,
The feels.
All the feels. It's so cute.
I half-heartedly expected it when he was about to look into the table. I was like, might be Applejack. But I still find the babies rather creepy, just because of the size of the eyes.
Same here. I don't know what it is, but there's something I get that they can be cute to a degree, but there's something unsettling about their features that makes me more or less kind of go ugh when I see them.
They have special eyes.
My brand.
It's whenever we see something that either has too small or too big of any kind of feature, it is something that unnerves us.
Hit the uncanny valley effect.
Yes.
And that's probably what the deal is with that particular one. So, as we're going over all of that various different stuff, Applejack, meanwhile, she's taking notes in her head of what she's going to need to plan out this event. We get a nice little shot when she's looking out the door of 2 shooting stars that go by in the sky. And we see those 2 shooting stars again at the end of the episode. And we actually do have confirmation from Twitter, from Sabrina Alberghetti, that this particular segment with the 2 shooting stars was in fact supposed to be a reference to Applejack and Apple Bloom and Big Macintosh's disappeared parents. Confirmation to a degree, I suppose, that they are deceased.
Oh, going back to the photo album, which they're looking through right when Applejack is looking out the window and we see those shooting stars. There's some interesting tactful omissions, I guess, which have to do with character design. When we're looking at the photos, the group photos outside the barn, we have like a black and white sepia one with the kind of younger filly Granny Smith and supposedly what would be her parents. And we have one where she's more grown up, more the age of the main 6. And then we jump right to essentially a modern one with grown up Big Mac and Applejack and Apple Bloom, I believe, is there as well. So we kind of skip over the entire point where you would see even Applejack's parents,
a hint of their parents,
even as fillies or anything. There's absolutely no character design really done for them at all, which I mean would be a lot to do simply if they're going to be in a photograph, but it's interesting that that's completely cut out.
That they go so far to keep them from being seen.
It doesn't so much as add to the mystery, but it adds to, it kind of hits home. It's like they're not even present, well, at least from what we see. They could be present in pictures that we don't see, but it just hits home that they're not there anymore.
Yeah, and it becomes really obvious, especially in a sort of episode like this, where you don't see these characters. And this particular episode is all about family. You'd think that they would get a mention. But I guess that because it's a children's show, especially since its target audience is, like 6 to 11-year-old girls, they probably have things against mentioning whether or not parents are deceased or anything like that, and so they just try to steer away from that sort of thing, and so the writers have to deal with that sort of thing, which is why we only get subtle little nods like the shooting stars.
I'm actually curious, since they had the photo album out, that would have been, I guess, like you said, they didn't really want to go too much into it. I was just curious that they have all the photos in there, but the Applejack's parents aren't really present in any of those photos. They're missing entirely. So, just I can see not going into it, but there's also the other spectrum where they're not like showing them at all. It's like they don't exist.
Sometimes that's easier, I guess, than calling attention to the fact that the parents are gone because they're like deceased or something like that. Because I guess there's a stigma against dead parents in media aimed at children.
Well, there might be a more pragmatic approach to that as well, because if they're not going to be in there and you're only going to have them in a few quick snapshots, that you're you have to go through the decision of who these people are, what they look like, everything. But you kind of have to start developing the characters.
You have to develop them and take the time to design them.
Right, and there's the cost aspect of doing that, and then not only that, but you're locked into that character design now without the focus of the story really being on the characters. You don't really know what you want to do with them yet.
There's also the fact that with death in children's shows, generally the best approach is a very soft and drawn out approach.
Absolutely, it's a very delicate subject, and I don't know. In my mind, it's more of an opportunity, not just like, oh, we better not venture here. It's an opportunity to venture into it enough to where it's there, but you don't have to get into the grim and dirty of it necessarily.
I think that it would be something that should. I think it's something that should actually be called attention to a bit more in children's stuff, because I have 4 nieces who actually fall within the age group that this particular show is aimed for, and they've actually had to deal with some death recently regarding family and also family pets, and I think that it hits really, really hard for a child who's unprepared for that sort of thing. And I think that children's media is actually a great opportunity for them to sort of bring it up in a soft manner. That way it gives parents who watch the shows with their kids and stuff like that an opportunity to actually discuss it with their children as a means of preparing them for the future.
Absolutely.
My nieces were crushed when their pet dog died. And my sister and her husband had to actually explain to them what happened when it happened. And there wasn't any preparation or anything like that. And I think the children's media could actually use this a lot more as a sort of almost an educational thing.
Yeah, because it's at a young age, you're already being exposed. Like your goldfish dies, your parents have to, explain that to you and just explain that it's a part of, it's a part of living. But they'd have an opportunity here to be able to, I guess, expose them a little bit to it, since they've already got an exposure, just naturally.
It opens up an avenue for the discussion to be had with their parents, which helps to prepare the children in the future. You don't have to show it like blatantly, but you give something soft and sort of subtle and light enough that the kid can pick up on it a little bit and then ask their parents, and their parents can explain.
I just want to say, though, that as much preparedness as things like this can give, nothing will ever fully prepare them for that.
For it.
It's a sad fact, and I do think it helps, though. It will prepare them somewhat, which is always better than being completely unprepared, but in the end, it's not really going to matter that much, because it's still something that hits home really hard, and it just impacts you so much. I just want to say, I think we've dwelled on this topic a little too much, so onto something cheerier.
Okay, so onto something cheerier. Applejack's stress. Much cheerier.
Yes.
But when we see Applejack all stressed out and stuff like that, we see her hair all frazzled and stuff, and we realize that she's been keeping Apple Bloom awake. And I wanted to bring up a little point here that when Apple Bloom comes into the room, she's still got her ribbon in her hair, her bow. Does she sleeps with her bow in her hair?
There's nothing wrong with that.
I just didn't think that it was one of those things that people would actually just do. I think it's more just they didn't want to change the character design to have no ribbon in the hair.
Well, if you had to tie a ribbon with hooves, you probably wouldn't want to take it out too often.
That is true. I imagine it's really hard to tie that bow. But then again, maybe it's just a clip-on bow.
Maybe she didn't actually go to sleep. Maybe she just was, staying up.
I think the implication was that she was being kept up because of Applejack pacing in her bedroom.
No, how Apple Bloom gets her bow on is through a series of intricate pulley systems.
Now we're going to need to see somebody make up a little like fan comic how Apple Bloom ties her bow in her hair.
Laser guided bow tying system.
We may be putting a little too much thought into this. So I think it's time for us to bow out.
Oh, that was bad.
Gosh.
Regarding Applejack's stress, really quick, you'd mentioned before the discussion of the Apple family reunion in Applebuck season.
Applebuck season, yeah.
I mean, with that episode, we kind of learned that Applejack and Large Tasks don't quite get along. But in this one, you have the little montage with the main six, or not the main six, but the main six.
Yeah, you get some cameo appearances by Rarity, Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, and Spike.
Yeah, so I mean, she's stressing out, but I guess she delegates things a little better. So maybe she did learn something from that episode.
Not necessarily. Well, to an extent, but at the same time, she's doing a lot of the legwork. But I also thought it was interesting how she spends most of this episode dwelling so much on what everyone's going to be doing, not necessarily the family togetherness that is supposed to be the focus of a family reunion.
Exactly. And you see she puts so much thought into the planning. You know, she's got the little easel with the paper that she's got all of the plans written on. She's got mountains of crumpled paper in her bedroom and stuff like that. And she's taking this task really seriously because Granny Smith handed her the reins, and it's up to her to take care and control of that.
See, I think she suffers a similar problem as she does in Applebuck season in this episode. Not so much with her stubbornness, but it's she's very headstrong in the episode like last time, and she manages to overthink things, and that's how the episode ends with trouble.
This actually ties into something that I kind of had a problem with the Applejack-centric episodes for the most part, is that they all kind of deal with the same sort of issue when it comes to Applejack. Is in Applebuck season, it was dealing with her stubbornness. In the last roundup, it was dealing with her not wanting to have to admit that a promise that she has made she couldn't keep because she wasn't able to do what she set out to do. In one way, it's just one other way she's being stubborn about the whole situation. And in this one, she's taken a task that from Granny Smith that she's promised, she's going to make it the greatest thing ever. And now she is so dead set on doing that she's micromanaging. And she even is, in this episode as well, very stubborn, because when people try to point out that they aren't having fun with the situation, she just kind of ignores them in favor of saying, well, you haven't gotten to this part of my plan yet. It's kind of like in that episode of SpongeBob SquarePants where he wants to throw a party and he reads a book on how to throw parties and have a fun party, and he overplans and micromanages the entirety of the party to the point to where no one is able to have fun until he accidentally locks himself out of his own house.
I disagree on that a little bit. I think it's more of her not necessarily being stubborn, but just overthinking, the details. And she's focusing on the wrong thing. She's not focusing on the family togetherness, like I mentioned earlier. She's focusing on, keeping everyone doing something, not missing a beat. Always there's someone having something to do, not just sitting around and just willy-nilly chatting.
which is practically the point.
They're either baking fritters or they're,
The ridiculously overcomplicated seven-legged race where they have to run over a hill that's hundreds of yards away and then spin around in a figure eight into the trees and spin plates on their nose while saying a tongue twister. And
it's basically taking the memories that were in the book from the beginning, or the photo album,
turning them up to 11.
Turning them up to 11. Taking everything, like they mentioned, we're never going to finish that quilt. No, Applejack's like, oh, okay. Instead of seeing that as an opportunity for them to have togetherness, she sees that as a challenge. She wants them to be able to finish the quilt and get everything done.
Yeah, she kind of misses the point of the quilt. It's not so much the fact that they haven't been able to finish the quilt, but more that the quilt is something they do every reunion. And with luck, the quilt will never be finished because every reunion someone's going to be working on the quilt.
Speaking of the quilt, who gets it when it's done?
I don't know.
Clearly it goes to the champion of the land and they can wear it as a top.
it goes to the Highlander because there can only be one wielder of the quilt.
I recall. I think that my family actually had something that was similar to that because we have a lot of women who do sewing in my family, and I think that they did a quilt as well, and it took them something like 2 or 3 reunions to finish, and then what they did is at the next reunion they had a little contest or whatever, and then the winner of the contest got the quilt and like another prize, like a bunch of baskets of food and stuff.
My family reunions were always they were all centered around getting everyone together, and that was pretty much it. Just getting everyone together, and then we just had a barbecue, and just everybody got together, chatted, and that was it. There was no real activities, so it was interesting to see all the various things that the Apple family was putting on.
Most of our family reunions had activities for the kids. It was one of those things where everybody else kind of sat around, they grilled up their hot dogs and stuff while everyone had fun on the beach. And there were a few events for like parents and their children and stuff like that. Like we actually had a 3-legged race at one of our reunions, but we also had other games like a piñata and pin the tail on the donkey and stuff like that. But most of the adults, because the only reunions I even remember going to the ones when I was a kid, most of the adults just kind of sat around chit-chatting. They had a few beers or they had, some soda, and they were eating their burgers while they just talked with extended family members that they never get to see.
I will say that the whole family reunion thing is completely foreign to me. In England, a country that you can travel from the very bottom to the very top in less than a day, it just seems like something we'd never have to do because we can visit family literally anytime we want. So it's an interesting perspective to me, watching, like, even in a cartoon, a family reunion.
That's a fair point.
I can see that. And then in the smaller countries that don't have to deal with the kind of breadth of space that places like the States or even Canada or various different larger countries have, when you can, just hop on a train or whatever and go from southern point to northern point on the country, it's not that difficult to see to see your family members, extended family, and otherwise. Remembering the quilt, what did you guys think of the characters of Apple Rose and Applesauce?
Nobody.
Nobody has any opinion on Apple Rose and Applesauce.
In all honesty, oh god, I'm turning into bones. In all honesty, you guys.
I haven't used the phrase "in all honesty" in a long time.
Honestly, I thought the characters, at least Apple Rose, was rather unmemorable.
Well, they were interesting characters in the way that they brought a bit of comedy into the picture, but it wasn't so much that, I want to learn more about their backstory. Maybe a little bit because of the stories that Granny Smith told, but not too much, really.
I did enjoy the way that, especially that they interacted with one another. I especially liked the way that Applesauce talked. And also another point to bring up was the mentioning of the fact that her original name wasn't Applesauce, and she got that name later on. So do ponies tend to frequently change names depending on their age and various different other things?
I mean, it's not like a name change is unheard of in real life. It happens all the time, really, so it's not something that'd be uncommon in Equestria, especially with the fact that most people, when they're adults, are named after their cutie mark, whereas beforehand they may be named something completely different. I'm sure we brought it up in the episode in Season 2, where we see the flashback of Granny Smith's childhood days. I'm sure before she got her cutie mark, she wasn't called Granny Smith. In fact, I'm positive she wasn't called that until she was older, to be a granny. Maybe she was just called Mama Smith.
It struck me as just a nickname that they had given her because of this funny little story, which, I mean, that's something that people do, so I don't know if that's officially her name. From where she's from, the people there might not call her that, but obviously the people from the family reunion, because of, at least her contemporaries like Granny Smith would call her that because, they're not going to let her live down that little incident.
I am curious, though, now that you brought that up, I wonder what her cutie mark would reference as far as a name, since obviously when she's younger, like you pointed out, she wouldn't be called Granny Smith, but she has an apple pie cutie mark. Was she...
Apple pie?
I guess, apple pie? That's interesting. I wonder what her name combination would be.
It's an intriguing line of thought, and it doesn't leave me curious, because generally speaking, the cutie mark doesn't just represent the talent, but also tends to mirror the name of the pony. So perhaps Granny Smith was called something differently in her youth, and same thing goes for Applesauce. One thing I did like about these characters, though, however minor they might be, and yeah, we might not be all that intrigued to see further into their backstory, but I did like the way that they were portrayed in the episode, because they were good for a laugh. I loved how Applesauce was this sort of posh Southern belle kind of character. And she talks with that kind of arrogance, and then, like, when they're talking about her dentures, she's like, a lady never reveals the age of her teeth.
Oh, that was kind of funny.
I loved all of the different localities, I guess, that you had there with the Apple family. It just kind of gives you a sense of, I don't know, scale or distribution from where they are. You've got the fritter making ponies, that it's almost a Minnesotan accent, I guess.
You got those ponies making the apple fritters, asking about each other's children.
Well, they are from all the corners of Equestria with their own orchards and things.
Oh yeah, you got like the Manhattanites, so they've got like the New York or Bronx or Brooklyn accents, and you got the Jersey guys, and you got the Minnesotans, so they're all talking like people from up north. But then you've also got the ponies like Applesauce who speak with that sort of stereotypical Southern belle accent.
If anything, it shows the diversity of the Apple family. Like I said, well, I mentioned this earlier, I believe I saw a few very offbeat cutie marks. I think one was a series of radishes on his flank.
Well, and according to if we just take stuff like the episode Cutie Mark Chronicles into account, we know that the Apple family actually extends into more than simply Apple family members, because Applejack's aunt and uncle, Orange, are Manhattanites, but their specialty obviously lies in something other than apples, like oranges. And you've got the people, like you said, who have the radishes for their cutie marks, and you see a bunch of different characters. So pretty much the Apple family probably has its roots in tons of different families, all spread out throughout Equestria, especially considering they're a founding family of places that are of apparently as much importance as Ponyville.
Basically, they're just generally a farming family then. But this brings up a point I was thinking of earlier. How extended are the other ponies' families? I mean, when it comes to, like, say, Twilight Sparkle, we only know of her brother and her parents. Does she have any, like, cousins, any extended family? And it'd be quite interesting to see a reunion of all the other main six's families, that's for sure.
Sadly, I think that's probably one of those questions that's answered with they're as extensive as the creators need them to be for the show. Like the Apple family, it's kind of their shtick, I guess. I don't want to say it that, I guess that maybe comes across bad.
I'd say that they are probably the most family-oriented characters in the show.
Yes, that's what I was going to mention, of them having, some families just aren't as, involved, they aren't as together as other families are, so maybe the Apple family is just a little more tight-knit than some of the other characters in the show.
And as far as the other families we've seen a little bit of Pinkie Pie's family based upon her Cutie Mark story. We've seen a little bit of Twilight's family thanks to Flashbacks, and of course Shining Armor being her brother. And we've seen a little bit of Rarity's family because we met her parents, and of course we see Sweetie Belle all the time. But for the most part, those family members are pretty much always not present, Applejack is the only one who's consistently, shown with her family, because their family all lives in the same spot. For all we really know as far as the other family members, Twilight's family all live in a different place, so we don't see them. Pinkie Pie's family, as far as we know, lives somewhere else. They're probably still on the rock farm, depending upon how much truth Pinkie Pie's story had, because everything's crazy with Pinkie Pie. And the most we ever really understand about Rarity's parents is that they seem to be out of the picture quite often and tend to either foist Sweetie Belle on Rarity most of the time, or generally they just are off doing their own thing. And then Rainbow Dash, we don't see her parents or anything like that, and Fluttershy, we don't see anything with her family either. So I think it's just a matter of Applejack is kind of, she falls into the category of being that friend with a lot of family. Moving on, finally, because we kind of exhausted that topic. So, in an effort to get everybody's spirits up when Applejack notices that nobody really seems to be having all that much fun, she puts them on a wagon ride. And while they initially enjoy the ride because it seems to be relaxing, Applejack once again tries to spice it up by making it an exciting event. And we are treated to fruit bats who cause the wagon to go out of control and crash into the barn, completely destroying it. First things first, what's your guys' opinion on the quote-unquote fruit bats?
Oh, a terrible pun.
It's an interesting take on fruit bats, but it served its purpose in this. It was magnificent at first, then quickly turned into a disaster.
Yeah.
It's odd because you've got that split with wildlife in Equestria, where you've got Fluttershy's pets, which you got the bunnies and the birds and all the little animals, and then you've got bats made of fruit and wolves made of tree. Exactly.
Some things are a lot more fantastic than others.
I can see why they didn't harvest that West Orchard for the longest time, though.
I don't think the fruit bats actually get their color from feeding off fruit. They clearly eat Rainbow Dash's mane at night.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, gosh. That...
Venture up and steal from Cloudsdale at night, you mean?
Yep.
What it is they shower in the spicy pool of the rainbow.
There you go.
So we got the fruit bats, and they cause the wagon to run to careen into the barn, which destroys the barn. And of course, Applejack is completely miserable, but this is actually given a good opportunity to show Applejack that she's been missing the entire point of the reunion all along. And so she comes up with the plan that, all right, we're going to do this proper, and they decide to raise up a new barn, spend the rest of the time of the reunion raising the barn, and we're treated to our song, Raise This Barn.
Octavia's cousin apparently is a member of the Apple family.
Yeah, her fanon name at the moment is Fiddlesticks.
Clever.
No, she should be called Appletavia, because that makes the most sense.
Oh, Crescendo.
Honestly, my opinion of the song is it's a decent song. It's not my favorite, albeit I'm probably sure it's someone else's. But it's a good song nonetheless. It's very catchy and will stick in your head, especially the...
It's an earworm, but not all earworms are good.
It's especially the most repeated line, which is "Raise This Barn."
I think it's a pretty solid song. It's very simple, yet it serves itself pretty well in its presentation.
I do have one thing to say in regards to Applejack getting a song. Finally!
Yes. Finally.
Finally, but I do have to say that it's kind of an opportunity that I felt was a bit wasted, because I'm one of those people who doesn't much care for this particular song. And while there are aspects of the song that are good, it didn't feel like a really complete or fully fleshed out song, because the most often repeated lines in the song are raise this barn, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's probably the worst part about the song, is that a good portion of it is just literally counting.
Though you have to take into account that music doesn't just rely on the lyrics. Sure, lyrics help, but you've got to take into mind is the whole thing put together. So yes, the lyrics aren't the most creative.
The tune is nice and catchy, and like you said, it is something of an earworm. It does stick in your head, but for me, I was just a little bit bothered by the fact that it was there was so much of raise this barn, 1, 2, 3, 4.
having been to quite a few hay rides and barn dances in my day, it's pretty well set in this atmosphere.
Bones, I gotta agree with you on the lyrics. The first time I heard this, I really didn't like it too much. I mean, I think it fits the character as an Applejack song. It would just be, I don't know, like if they'd made Applejack's first song a rap or something, which I doubt they would do. But it's you couldn't, even if it was good, you'd say, why is Applejack rapping? Applejack's not gonna rap. And I don't really listen to this style of music, so I think that might have had something to do with it too. I agree that on successive viewings, it's kind of catchy. I think they did a good job with it. And lyrics aside, I mean, some things we can focus on there. Some amazing fiddle playing, which I believe was Cameron Wilson, and the choir near the end, I believe, was the UBC University Singers, which is interesting as well. I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm being from Canada, but the fact that it wasn't just outsourced to a recording studio, generic kind of, but it was a local student group that actually was in that song as well. So it's interesting, the production behind it is as well, I guess. So we can focus on the lyrics, but I think that there's a lot else that the song does right and does offer.
I'm not a huge country music fan, and which is odd being from where I am, but this is actually pretty easy listening. And the production they put into it definitely shows. It was well-rounded, it had a good sound to it, the lyrics, they were decent. I can see where you're coming from, Bones, but I think it was still enjoyable.
I can agree with that sentiment, and like I said, the tune is fun. The tune is fun, and I can definitely appreciate the work that went into it from the production side of things. It just, I felt that the lyrics were a bit lacking, in my opinion. So, with all that said, and the barn being successfully raised, and pleasant memories being added to the whole cacophony of different forms of exhaustion and just outright chaos that Applejack's original plan for the reunion happened to be, we finish off with some more photos in the photo album and the two shooting stars coming across the night sky again. So, what are the scores, everybody? What do we think of this episode? Scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being absolutely perfect. What would you say this episode rates as?
Now, I've been giving out a string of high scores as of late, and as much as I hate to say that I didn't so much as dislike the episode, but I don't think it's one of the stronger episodes. It's still a good episode, mind you, but I'm gonna have to give it a 4 this time around. I mean, it's still a pretty high score, but I don't feel it was the strongest of all the episodes so far.
One Trick is going to be very disappointed in you. And as much as she would have wanted to be in this episode review, sadly she couldn't be.
We were going to have a lovely little hayseed review here, so Cowboy Dave and One Trick would both be present. But due to various different personal issues at the time, One Trick could not be available today.
My apologies for interjecting, Crescendo.
In One Trick's stead, I will give a One Trick 5.
There you go.
But for myself, I have to give it a 4. Still an enjoyable episode. I can still honestly say I've not disliked an episode of this show, ever. And you just have to, be able to determine which episodes are the good episodes and which are the not so good but still decent episodes. How about you, Dave?
For me, I haven't had an episode that I didn't enjoy out of this entire series. There were some that just weren't as rewatchable for me, but this episode I'd definitely watch again. I'd say I'd probably give it a 4.5 out of 5. It hit all the points. It even had letters to Celestia in this episode. That's something we haven't had in a little while, if I recall. But it had good elements, a full story, lesson learned. It's a pretty solid episode in my opinion.
Alrighty. Ramble, what about you?
Well, if this had just been a rehash of the ideas from Applebuck season and the last roundup, I'd have to call this my least favorite episode of Season 3 so far. And to me, the premise is a bit forgettable, but focusing on what it does right, I'm seeing an Applejack story that gives a lot of time to the character, which hasn't always been the case. A musical number which, while not universally loved, is a solid work with a style that really stands out as unique from the rest of the songs in the series. And we have some great gags and visuals. I especially loved the moment where Applejack uses Spike as a lighter, and Apple Bloom's returning one-liner, "Seriously?" has a wonderful delivery.
And Michelle Creber had an excellent delivery with some of those lines like that.
It's a well-rounded episode, and I can definitely see myself watching it again. 4 out of 5.
It was pretty good. Also, that's actually another on the subject of the vocals. I really liked Brianna Drummond's Babs in this a lot more than in One Bad Seed, and I think it's because the accent was a bit clearer and the lines were delivered a bit better in this episode. My score. I'm going to have to agree with you, Ramble, on a lot of the points you said. Biggest thing that I probably had with this particular episode is I felt it was more or less a rehash of Applejack being stubborn in one way or another. In previous episodes, it was her being stubborn because she wanted to do the work by herself, or it was her not wanting to own up to the fact that she couldn't live up to her promises. And in this one, it's her not paying attention when people are trying to tell her that her plan for the funnest reunion ever isn't really going to plan. Aside from that, though, lots of stuff was fun in this. All of the interactions with the minor characters, the little family members, Apple Bloom and Babs and their interaction during that 7-legged race, and how they're trying to, communicate while doing all of this stuff that Applejack set up for them. All of that was fun. The song, while I might have had a little bit of an issue with the lyrics being so simple, it was still a catchy tune. It was still lots of fun. And overall, I would probably give this one a 4. Alrighty, and that does it for Everfree Radio Presents Apple Family Reunion Season 3, Episode 8 of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. This has been our review. Yes, it ran a little bit long, but, sometimes that happens. Continue to give your feedback on our new format and continue to leave your comments either here on YouTube or on our website at everfree.net. Thank you for joining us. I've been your host, Brushin Bones.
I'm Crescendo.
I'm Cowboy Dave.
And I'm Ramble.
And we will see you next time on Everfree Radio Presents here on Everfree Network.